Hi, everyone, and a big welcome to you all today. Thanks so much for joining us for the second in our Lunch and Learn webinars. Today's topic is Listening to Babies, How to Take Account of Infants' Views and Rights with our guest speaker, Carmel Ward, in collaboration with Dublin City South CYPSC. My name is Laura Power, and I'm the Services Manager with ISPCC Childline. Also joining me on the webinar today is Nuala Nicaboon, CYPSC Coordinator for Dublin City South CYPSC, and Carmel Ward, Research and Evaluation Manager with Early Childhood Ireland, who we are delighted to have with us today. Thank you for taking the time out and being with us here this lunchtime. In a moment, I'll talk a little about our ISPCC services and programmes on offer before handing over to Nuala and Carmel. First off, we just have a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. You may have noticed all participants have automatically been placed on mute with your cameras off. We will be having a Q&A session at the end, so if you have any questions during the webinar, you can send them in using the Q&A feature, and we will try to get to as many as possible. If we do not answer your question, please feel free to contact us afterwards for more information. All of our contact details will be shown at the end of the webinar. And just a reminder as well that this webinar is being recorded and it will be made available across all ISPCC digital platforms. So a bit about us here in ISPCC and the programs and services that we offer. So we provide a wide range of services to children, young people and their families. ISPCC would probably be best known for its Childline listening service, which is a 24/7 listening service available to all children and young people up to and including the age of 18 via phone and online chat. We also have our Ask the Team service for children and young people where you can ask a question about anything you want. There's nothing too big or too small. Our Childline Therapeutic Support Service provides children, young people, and families with therapeutic support. We can meet children and young people where they are most comfortable, whether online or in your home, at a local community centre, or at their school. We have the service in various locations throughout the country. We then have our Smart Move School Transition Programme, which aims to support the emotional resilience of children as they prepare to transition from primary to secondary school. Our Shield Anti-Bullying Programme, which aims to support any organisations working with young people in their efforts to proactively manage bullying. We then have our digital mental health and wellbeing programs, which are aimed at reducing anxiety for children and young people, and digital programs for parents and carers around managing their own anxiety while supporting their anxious child or teen. The Parenting Hub on the ISPCC website publishes articles in relation to parenting and parenting supports on a range of topics. Our Digital Ready Hub is a trusted destination for information on how you can support children and young people to have a positive experience online. We also have video content from cyber psychology experts, the Garda Online Exploitation Unit, clinical psychologists, principals, parents, and young people. We also have a support line, which is a listening service, offering information, advice, and emotional support to parents and carers. It opens between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m., Monday to Friday, and can be accessed by calling 01 522 4300. Our Ask Robin service is also available for parents, where you can ask us a question on anything to do with parenting. And finally, we are also delighted to say that Vodafone Ireland Foundation has partnered with DCU Anti-Bullying Centre and Childline by ISPCC to develop and launch Tozy, a new app aimed at creating a safer, more positive online space for young people. The app is free and available to download on mobile phones in Ireland via iOS and Android. Tozy aims to educate, empower, and support young people with the tools and advice they need to move and have a more positive online experience delivered through engaging features within the app while navigating online life. For more information on any of our services, log on to www.ispcc.ie. I'm now going to hand over to Nuala to introduce our guest speaker. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Laura. It's great. It's always great to hear the range of activities and supports that are available through ISPCC, and they're a great partner for us in Dublin City South CYPSC, just as well as contributing on a continuous basis for something like our webinar here, because your platform is fantastic. And as Laura said, this video will be made available, so it's not only for you, but to people to come back to it again, but to share, share with colleagues or friends going forward. As Laura said, this is the Dublin City South CYPSC led initiative. It is our Infant Health and Wellbeing Working Group. Our colleague Emma Riley, who is the chair of the Infant Health and Wellbeing Working Group, wasn't available to attend today, even though she was the primary organizer, I must say. But on behalf of Emma and the working group, we just want to welcome you all to today's webinar. We had a great webinar yesterday, so no pressure at all, Carmel, to fulfill another great webinar today. And it was with Trish Hanley and the Let's Grow Together project in Cork, where it was around the newborn baby observational behaviour, which was just amazing, I have to say. And I think one of the things that Trish did say at the outset of the webinar yesterday was just to invite people to kind of sit back and relax and listen. You know, this is a lunchtime webinar. You're not on camera, so you can drink your tea or drink your soup or whatever you're doing. And it's really a really good opportunity at a very busy time of the year to take some time to listen. And it's just a fascinating subject. I'm really looking forward to it myself. Just as part of this work that we're doing on the Let's Connect, which is nearly a week, we've 4 days this week where we've activities on, the 3 webinars yesterday, today and tomorrow, and then that's open to all across the country. And I even got a message from someone in Amsterdam yesterday, so I was a bit surprised at the reach. Not Dublin City South CYPSC, I'd say. But on Friday, we're going to have an in-person event with services in Dublin South City. So we're also really looking forward to that. I'd probably be in big trouble if we didn't mention our funders, which is the Healthy Ireland CYPSC programme. So as you all know, things can't get magicked up sometimes, but we do get funding from the Healthy Ireland programme, which is around the importance of health at all stages of life. So the Infant Health and Wellbeing Working Group in Dublin City South CYPSC is around promoting the health and well-being of children in the first 1,000 days. And there's no doubt, but part of that includes, hearing the voice and taking into account both the views and rights of children in this important stage of life. So it's a really great opportunity for us as the Infant Health and Wellbeing Working Group, but also as the CYPSC members, where we're promoting a rights-based approach and making sure that at all stages of life that children's voice is heard about their lives and the things that impact on their lives. So as I said, this is an opportunity to kind of sit back and enjoy, let it wash over you, let there be lots of thinking for you now, but also an opportunity to just to take on board some of what Carmel is going to point out to us, and then we can all work forward or take a step forward in the future in how you will bring that practice into what you are delivering at a local level, no matter where you are. So without further ado, as they say, I'm going to hand over to Carmel Ward, the Research and Evaluation Officer with Early Childhood Ireland. So thanks again, Carmel, and thanks to Laura, Niamh and Siobhan.
Thank you for the introductions. I'm delighted to be here, and I hope you are all feeling relaxed. I thoroughly enjoyed the webinar yesterday and learnt a lot, so it's a hard act to follow, but here I am. Although I am now a research manager at Early Childhood Ireland, I spent 10 years as a deputy and then a head teacher at a nursery school and children's centre, which served 5,000 children from birth to 5 years. We had a large family support team and a speech and language therapist who provided health, early education and parenting support. Many of our families faced huge challenges, including domestic violence and addiction, which in turn had an effect on babies and their rights. I wanted to emphasise that because today I'm speaking about listening to babies through a combined research, practice and human rights lens. Throughout the webinar, I'm going to provide some provocations to get you thinking and invite you as professionals and perhaps parents to link these to your own expertise, your professional knowledge and practice, the strategies and tools you already know and use in your work with babies and their families. I think it's really important to start with listening. So my interest in and advocacy for listening to children stems from practice. Early on in my career, it became clear to me that when adults do not listen to children, we convey to them that we do not value them or the things that matter to them. As a newly qualified teacher, I felt that I was not heard when I tried to advocate for better listening. I later found that framing the importance of listening as a right was powerful. In fact, I realised that rights can be empowering for both children, their parents, and professionals. So although listening to babies and young children is frequently discussed, today I'm going to reflect on the importance of listening in the context of children's rights. So listening to babies and children's views and feelings has profound impacts. We see that and we feel that in our practice. And research also shows that listening conveys to babies that they matter. It gives them social recognition and visibility. This enables babies and young children to feel seen and respected, which is essential for their sense of identity and belonging, as well as their self-esteem and well-being. Listening strengthens connections between babies, their caregivers. For parents and professionals, listening also enriches our understanding of babies' perceptions, their feelings, and their lived experiences. However, listening to children's views is not just a model of good practice, but it's a legally binding obligation enshrined in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The Convention on the Rights of the Child, particularly Article 12, has provided momentum and a framework for listening to and taking account of babies' views and feelings in decision making that matters that affect them. This means going beyond listening and recognising babies and toddlers as rights holders who have agency in shaping their lives. So Article 12 in the UNCRC entitles every child who is capable of forming a view the right to express their views freely in all matters affecting them and to have their views given due weight in accordance with their age and maturity. This right applies to early childhood and all children under the age of 8 from birth. So the right to express views and feelings should be anchored in the children's daily lives at home and in their community across early childhood health, care and education facilities, in legal proceedings and in policy and service development, including research and consultations. Parents and professionals make decisions every day about matters that affect babies and young children. In addition to being a human right, involving babies in decision making helps professionals and parents to identify problems they face, leading to better solutions and developing more effective policies, services, programs, facilities, and interactions. Ultimately, it helps decision makers make more informed and beneficial best interest decisions. From a rights-based perspective, being heard and taken seriously is fundamental to respecting children's inherent human dignity, which is the ultimate purpose of human rights. This contributes to babies' holistic development and well-being by contributing to creating environments of happiness, love, and understanding, which, although are not legally binding, they are recognised in the Convention. Now, perhaps in the wake of what we call ongoing resistance to the idea that babies and young children can form and express views and influence decision making, there's been rapid growth in research and consultation with children, particularly between 3 years and 8 years. This has led to an abundance of evidence on issues such as well-being, play and learning, and their experience of rights. In addition, there is increasing interest and practical guidance concerning young children's involvement in decision-making in early childhood. However, in practice, it's very noticeable that babies and young children's rights continue to be overlooked in decision making across the full range of early childhood provision or experiences. Consultation with the youngest children from birth remains rare. There are fewer opportunities for babies and toddlers to share their views and experiences, but particularly in policy, service and curriculum development. One exception is a consultation with babies and toddlers and young children to inform the updating of Ireland's early childhood curriculum framework. This consultation was undertaken by Early Childhood Ireland together with Maynooth and Stranmillis universities. It has drawn international recognition for actively seeking the views of babies and toddlers. One of the reasons for the limited consultation with babies is because images and expectations that adults hold about babies and young children, for example, their capabilities or incapabilities, have a powerful effect on whether their views are taken seriously and acted upon. The privileging of voice and verbal communications in society and perceptions that children under 5 lack the capabilities and maturity to form reliable or valid views about their world works to exclude babies and non-verbal children from decision making. Through my own experiences and research, it's become increasingly apparent to me that in participation work, there has been limited recognition of the fact that all human rights are indivisible, interrelated, and interdependent. Article 12 of the Convention is not only a right in itself, but it is a guiding principle that should be considered in the interpretation and the implementation of all other rights. However, it remains one of the most cited but least understood of all the rights in the Convention. In addition, while many people have embraced the mantra of children's voice, this does not capture the full extent of Article 12 and could in fact undermine its implementation. You may already be aware, but there are many articulations of Article 12, and here are a few child-friendly examples. So one of them includes the right to be listened to and taken seriously, and another is the right of children to be heard and taken seriously. You might notice that none of the articulations include or reference the word voice. In view of all the concerns that I've just drawn your attention to, Laura Lundy developed a model for involving children in rights-based decision making. The model distinctly positions Article 12 in the context of other rights such as non-discrimination, best interests, freedom of expression and right to information. It makes it a holistic rights-based model. The Lundy model, which you've probably heard about, is now a well-known and used, legally sound but user-friendly conceptualization. To enact Article 12, the model identifies 4 concepts that require consideration. That's space, voice, audience, and influence. The model has been applied frequently in early childhood. And in Ireland, in fact, the Lundy model is the cornerstone of the national framework for children and young people's participation in decision making. Hub na Nóg's latest resource, released only this week, is a toolkit designed to support adults in meaningfully engaging young children in decisions that affect their lives. It uses the Lundy model and focuses on the inclusion of babies, toddlers, and young children under 5. So from here, I'm going to revisit the 4 elements of the Lundy model to highlight how parents and professionals can listen and take account of infants' views and rights across different contexts. So first, space refers to children's opportunities to express views. Everyday issues and practices in family and early years settings should organically create opportunities for babies and young children to express their views and feelings. Familiar spaces created through relationships can be rich in opportunities for interaction and expression, and in turn enables adults to listen and engage with babies more effectively. Familiar spaces that allow a slow, fluid process of interactions between adults and babies are particularly beneficial. So connecting Article 12 with Article 19, the right to protection, it is important that this space is safe, one where babies will not fear disapproval or criticism, punishment, being silenced or ignored. A safe space in this context goes beyond the physical environment. The critical role of emotionally attuned and responsive relationships is well established in early years practice, and it is particularly important for babies given their capacities to express their emotions. Adults therefore need to consider the relational and emotional dimensions of space, which requires fostering consistent, respectful and trusting relationships through intentionally conveying warmth and respect towards babies to ensure that they feel safe. Peter Alpha calls early years practice emotional work. Parents and professionals who work with babies will be familiar with the intensity and the temporality of how they express their emotions, including distress and anger, as well as love. Creating a safe space requires that babies can express their feelings freely and safely, trusting that a dedicated adult, their parents, carers, or other professionals are consistently available to support them. I think it's worth acknowledging that parental and professional stress or issues that affect well-being can restrict safe opportunities for babies to express their views. Reading Article 12 with Article 2, that's non-discrimination, the space must be inclusive and open to all children. Research tells us that some groups of children are disproportionately excluded from decision-making, including babies and children who are pre or non-verbal, or of migrant and refugee backgrounds. Creating inclusive and equitable safe spaces for all, but particularly seldom heard children and babies who hold multiple social identities such as gender, ethnicity and abilities that intersect, means adapting opportunities in ways that not only respect but represent cultural and linguistic diversity. This also means deeply interrogating racist and biased practices. On a more optimistic note, the strong emphasis on creating relational, emotionally responsive and culturally safe environments within family and early childhood contexts, evident in, for example, the Ashtir framework, points to the potential for creating optimal space for babies and toddlers. For babies with intersecting identities, their rights are curtailed when adults underestimate their capacities or restrict opportunities to express their views. If babies' capacities become visible through relationships with others and the environment, then adults must create inclusive spaces that are conducive to making babies' views visible. On the other hand, creating space beyond babies' immediate worlds presents challenges. Realising the right to express views in policy and service development is often best achieved through partnerships between responsible authorities, parents and professionals who can provide meaningful and relevant opportunities that are anchored in children's and babies' daily lives. For instance, Ireland's consultation on updating Ashtir was undertaken in settings where the child participants' educators acted as co-researchers. This partnership approach provided opportunities for babies and toddlers to express their views in existing safe spaces. To suggest that direct participation is the only way to provide space, such as including babies in advisory or project steering groups, can actually curtail the implementation of Article 12 for infants. So the second element of the Lundy model is voice. Voice refers to facilitating children to express their views. The right to express a view is afforded to every child capable of forming a view, regardless of their age or maturity. So this includes babies. The right to express views freely is not limited to voice. There's an abundance of research that shows that young children from birth can form and express views through sophisticated embodied, physical, emotional, vocal and non-verbal communications. Research, including my own with children aged 3 to 6 in Rwanda, has increasingly recognised babies and young children's intentional emotional expressions as not only a way to communicate but to participate in decision making, which affords an additional avenue for babies to express their views freely. Non-verbal forms of communication, such as facial expressions, body language, movement, are integral to including those who might otherwise be represented as having no views. So the role of the adult in the element of voice is to enable babies to express their views freely on any matter affecting them in their preferred ways. This means, firstly, adapting our expectations of voice to babies' preferred ways of communicating and meaning making about their curiosities, interests, and issues that matter to them, which in the case of babies and young children often concern their families, their physical, social, or emotional needs and routines. Researchers and professionals globally have developed methods and practices for seeking babies' views. This includes the use of multiple and creative methods or interactions. For example, you might have heard of star catchers in Scotland who use the theatre and arts to consult with babies. However, enabling babies to express themselves does not need to involve creativity or complex methods. Everyday encounters and materials can open up the many ways in which babies and young children communicate about their lives. Familiar parenting or professional approaches and everyday encounters, such as building on babies' curiosities, using household objects, so I'm thinking about things like heuristic play, or offering choices, as in baby-led weaning, can support babies' non-verbal communication in everyday spaces and planned projects. We all know time is precious, but time is extremely important, and patience. This can be a challenge in homes and professional practice for many reasons. However, an increasing focus on slow relational practices is crucial. I also know that I'm stating the obvious to you all, but observation is vital to notice different ways of communication, such as physical actions, expressions, sounds, or silences. We heard about the newborn baby behavioural observation yesterday with Trish Hurley. Without observation, babies' views can become invisible. So this is quite the statement. Article 12 is a right, it's not a duty. There's sometimes a reluctance to believe in babies' rights. Parents and teachers and professionals have shared fears that rights mean that children can do whatever they want, and there's a fear that we might lose some power. However, in defending babies and young children's capacities to convey their views, a credibility gap has emerged between what it is sometimes claimed that babies and young children can do, should do, and actually what they can, should, and want to do, which unintentionally fuels the widespread resistance to seeking their views. This is where the Lundy model comes in helpful again. So the Lundy model emphasises that babies and young children may need support to form a view. Article 5 is the adult's duty to advise and guide the child, and this recognises the responsibility and role that parents and professionals play in making babies' rights real. Because babies are not always in a position of power to claim their rights, parents must be empowered to enact their babies' rights until babies can claim them for themselves. This is really important. So the role here for the adult means acting as facilitators, inviting, supporting, and guiding babies to express their views. Again, slow relational practices can help. Nonetheless, even when safe and inclusive opportunities have been offered, babies and young children may not wish or choose to share their views and should not be required to do so. In reality, there are issues on which some children and babies may not have a view or be able to form a view, particularly on conceptual issues or proposals rather than their lived experiences. We found that this was evident in the second phase of Ireland's consultation with babies and young children, which aimed to consult them on conceptual proposals to update the ASHTI curriculum. This was far more challenging than the first phase that focused on understanding their lived experiences within the current curriculum. So thinking about all of that, it's important to reflect on how, when, and about what babies are invited to express their views on and why, in order to make the process meaningful. So the second part of Article 12 requires that children's views are given due weight. This requires them to be heard, and that requires a listener, so an audience. The audience must have power to affect change in response to the children's views. A duty bearer who takes the role of listening to young children, respecting their dignity and their points of view. Parents, carers, and professionals within the family and early childhood provision occupy a privileged position as the audience. This audience must be ready to listen. Being ready to listen is demonstrated by consistently acknowledging and responding to babies through respectful, sensitive, everyday interactions. Giving due weight to babies and children's feelings and thoughts places a responsibility on adults, the audience, to engage in active listening. Active listening with respect and openness enables us to welcome and recognise the value of the other's point of view and to avoid trying to fit what we hear from babies into what we already know or think. So the dance of reciprocity mirrors the idea of audience. It's similar to the serve and return. It involves a back and forth interaction between the baby and the caregiver. This is a form of active listening where babies are active communicators and caregivers are responsive in their interactions and decision-making processes. A common challenge occurs when adults are not ready to listen or do not recognise the value of listening to and respecting infants' views. For example, in the dance of reciprocity, we know that it is important for the parent or professional to actively listen when babies and toddlers turn or move away from an interaction. This withdrawal should be respected. However, sometimes adults, often well-intentioned, attempt to keep the interaction going, but this can cause distress for the infant. So inevitably, observing, listening to, and trying to understand babies' expressions and feelings involves interpretation. We are often left wondering and considering how babies might be feeling or what they might need. Being present in encounters mean that interpretations of babies' expressions and vocalizations require the attention of an attuned caregiver. However, there is a risk in striving for the truth or perfection, particularly in professional practices where we really want to know what the child or the baby is thinking. There's a risk of seeking authentic voices and making claims of authenticity that can actually fail to fully reflect the complexity of interpreting babies' views. Therefore, adults who are responsible for guaranteeing children's right of audience must be ready to actively listen and to interpret their views with a degree of humility, to acknowledge that there may be multiple possibilities and uncertainties in our adult interpretations. So finally, the fourth element of the Lundy model is influence, and this has been called the holy grail of child participation. This is where the due must be placed in due weight. Giving children's views due weight in decision-making means that adults hold responsibilities in taking seriously and acting on babies and young children's views, ideas, choices, wishes, and feelings that affect their lives. The challenge is that this is made conditional upon age and maturity, a small clause that potentially opens a big door to the dismissal of the views of those who are younger or less mature, so particularly babies. We all know that babies and young children are right holders who can influence relationships or decision making, but often only when adults actively listen and are open to acting on their views and ideas. In the moment, practice examples include changing routines, following interest-led activities and interactions, such as being responsive in the dance of reciprocity, pausing or stopping, attending to babies and young children's emotions. Babies and toddlers learn that they can influence their environment when adults are truly open to following their lead, which honours their right to have their views taken seriously in matters affecting them. In my own research, children and often their emotions influenced the direction of interactions and decisions that were made, that in turn affected their research experiences. They also transformed adults, so that was their parents, their teachers, and my own ways of knowing and being. So babies' human rights unfold through relationships and interactions with their family and their community. In giving due weight and making best interest decisions, adults must draw both on their own expertise in children's and babies' lives and babies and children's expertise in their own lives. Challenges arise when adults' ideas, expectations, or agendas take priority and close the doors to participation. Again, this requires humility and self-reflection to notice what might restrict babies and children's influence in decision making. It's often time. Time is often a constraint that causes us to restrict babies' influence. In children's daily lives at home and in settings, constraints such as organisational systems and structures, which determine priorities or shape inflexible routines and limit time, can prevent adults from being truly open to seemingly small or insignificant changes. One practice example I can give you that seems somewhat trivial and quite micro is in early childhood settings where there are rigid nappy changing times, usually to fit around the needs of the adults, so around staffing and routines. Most people who work in those settings might notice that having a fixed time can disrupt babies' explorations and interactions. And this causes distress to babies and young children. So listening to the babies and young children and changing nappy times to be more responsive when it's needed rather than when it's convenient can really bring about a sense of calm to babies and young children's world. So to us, that might seem quite trivial, but to a baby's daily experience, it's actually quite a powerful change that they experience. In research and consultations, a reoccurring challenge is attributed to tokenistic approaches. That means when we listen, so we enable children to be heard, but actually we fail to give their views due weight. That means we don't take them seriously at the end of the day. This often happens because the audience is either not fully open or not fully prepared to seriously consider babies and children's perspectives. So it's really important that we acknowledge that babies and young children are agentic. However, children's human rights are situated in and unfold through interdependent relationships and interactions with their family and community. That means there are asymmetrical power relations. Ultimately, it's adults who can either limit or extend opportunities to listen and act upon babies' views. The persistent challenge for influence is finding ways of ensuring that adults are open and responsive to taking babies and young children's views seriously. There is a need to convince doubtful duty bearers, parents, professionals, teachers in society that children's right to be heard is legally required, logically useful, valuable, and actually possible. The Lundy model emphasises feedback. That means ensuring that babies and children are told how their views are taken into account, because this is a strategy for delivering influence and demonstrating the adults' accountability. With babies and young children, this includes being responsive and showing them in everyday and in the moment encounters what's been done in response to their views. Another way that I'm quite passionate about is to prepare the audience for influence through human rights education. That means learning about rights so that children and adults can label, defend, advocate for, and apply them all. For me, influence really is the crux of taking account of babies' views. In other words, babies' power to influence decision making is key. So to conclude, I would suggest that participation in decision making in early childhood presents something of a paradox. On the one hand, the everyday, child-centred context in which babies and young children experience their human rights in their homes, in their early childhood settings, provide an enabling environment in which it should not just be possible, but inevitable to seek and listen to babies' views and take them seriously. On the other hand, we know that there are inherent challenges in facilitating babies' right to be heard. Realising Article 12 is more difficult when it involves seeking babies and young children's views on conceptual issues and in macro law, policy, service or public spending decisions. This should not be a deterrent, however, but a pragmatic approach, practical approach is really needed. So today I wanted to sound a note of optimism. Research and practice in early childhood has flourished since the Lundy model was developed in 2007. Anchored in daily life, active listening within relational spaces and responsive relationships can contribute to embedding the elements of space, voice, audience, and influence into practice across early childhood health, care, education, legal proceedings, and national policy development through research and consultations. Responsive listening is fundamental to babies' right to be heard because it encourages babies to express their thoughts and feelings, knowing that they will be acknowledged and valued. So Article 12 provides an impetus to listen and take account of babies' views, and the Lundy model provides a rights-based framework for duty bearers to understand how to implement this right in practice. The Lundy model's positioning of Article 12 in the context of other rights can help realise not only babies' right to be heard, but their full spectrum of interconnected rights. Emphasising the interconnectedness of rights can also enhance the credibility and counter scepticism on the part of the audience so that babies' views are heard and influence decision making in meaningful ways. My own practice and my research experience have convinced me that using the Lundy model as a guide to enact Article 12 can make babies' rights to be heard and taken seriously achievable and potentially deeply embedded in practice. When adults engage with this approach, even the most doubtful and sceptical can have a change of heart and mind and become the strongest proponents for babies' right to be heard and to be taken seriously. Thank you.
Carmel, thanks so much for such an informative session. I hope that everyone watching has taken away as much as I have. I found it particularly interesting coming from an early years background myself. So thanks so much for all the information and the context on the Lundy model. It was really great to hear about the voice of the infant and how the Lundy model can be utilised to gain their views and rights, and also how everyday life as well, whether it's at home or in an early years setting, can be an opportunity for infants and children to express themselves while being supported by the Astra framework. Thanks again for that, Carmel. So we are going to run a quick anonymous poll before we go to our Q&A, just to gather your feedback on the webinar. And if you wouldn't mind just taking a few seconds to complete that as it pops up on your screen, we'd really appreciate that. And then also you're welcome to pop any questions you may have into our Q&A, and we'll get to as many as we can as well. Thanks so much.
I just might pop in there if you don't mind, rather than popping into the Q&A. I don't see anything in there at the moment. Carmel, can I just ask, when you mentioned about the consultation that was done for the ASHTR, was that produced as a report? Was there, was it, or was it just that the information was provided as part of the changes to the ASHTR? If I've read that correct, if I've heard that correctly.
No, there's a research report available.
Oh, okay, that'd be really interesting to see from a methodology their approach to it as well. Yeah. And you said that this week Hub na Nog launched. Was it a tool? Again, I'm just catching up. Was it a tool that they launched? Oh, okay.
Yes,
might have a look at that for circulating.
Yeah, they've launched a resource. So it's a toolkit to support involving babies and young children under 5 in decision making, and it's all based around the Lundy model. There are a few examples with babies. So one of the things I've been talking about is I think there's a real impetus and a commitment to listening to babies, but there are challenges. And I think there's more and more guidance and ways of doing that coming out, which I think is really welcome. But I think the professionals that work and parents that work directly and live directly with babies and children often have really good examples of how to take account of babies and infants' views. So I would suggest anybody who's listening on this webinar, if you've got case studies or examples, you might want to share them with Hub na Nóg so that they can strengthen the examples that they've got for babies so that other people can learn from you.
Yeah, it's a really good point, isn't it? Because it is it is an area that I suppose, the approach that's being taken is so multifaceted, from parents at home, service providers, the kind of wider engagement with, public health or, services that families attend as well. So it's a really interesting area to be learning from as well. So
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Carmel. Yeah, it's really informative. I don't know, Niamh, is there any questions pending? I see there's a lot of questions.
I actually have a question.
Sorry.
I was going to pop in myself. I was curious about the consultation around Ashton as well, Nuala, that you had mentioned. But I found very interestingly as well, the example. It's so common. It's part of everyday running of an earlier setting. The example of nappy changing, and I'm just wondering, are there any other particular transitions throughout the day of a young infant or child where you would see a really valid opportunity for their views and rights to be taken into account? I'd love to hear more about that, Carmel.
Yeah, I think there are many. I think it's going back to Trish's webinar yesterday. I think if we're observant and we notice and we take the time, we slow down and watch, if we watch how babies react and respond in everyday encounters and moments, I think it really helps us to make better decisions. So the nappy changing is one. Other routines are another. So often babies might be, and infants or young children might be engaged in something that they're really interested in. And often we adults sometimes come in because there's another priority or agenda and take them away, whether it's for nappy changing, whether it's to put their coat on and go home, whether it's to go outside because it's time to go outside. So we disrupt children's flow and what they're doing. And the challenge is that unsettles their emotions, it unsettles how they're feeling in that moment. But in an early years setting or a family home, when there are more than one baby, there's other siblings and family members, it also causes stress and distress to other people. So I do think that there's benefits to the babies and toddlers when we listen and respond and take into account their needs and feelings in the moment. That has wider repercussions on the rest of the connections in that group, whether it's at home or in the early childhood setting, because it usually brings a sense of calm when we respond to that and slow down and think, actually, is my agenda more important? Sometimes it is. You might need to go to a doctor's appointment and you need to go. But other times it might be something that we can compromise on and really think about giving that baby or the toddler's voice, feelings, thoughts, due weight in our decision and what we're going to do next.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's so important to bear that in mind, particularly with those transitions, especially for a very young infant or child where they may be offered different toys or different materials for the first time and their own emerging needs are coming about then, and that piece of exploration as well. And that's interrupted, as you mentioned, by the adults' needs and their own routine. So really interesting to hear about that. Thanks so much, Carmel. So I don't think we have any more questions that have come in there unless anyone
Sorry, Laura, there's one more in the Q&A there.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I didn't see that one there. Okay. Okay, so as a provider of baby massage, we always respect the baby's view and ask permission and follow the baby's lead. Some parents need support to understand their babies, especially in early weeks and months. Very valid point there. Carmel, if you have anything you'd like to add to that then around the baby massage as an opportunity to look for views and rights, of course.
Yeah. I mean, baby massage is really a great opportunity, isn't it, to strengthen interactions and connections between babies and their parents or caregivers. I like to take every opportunity I can to explain rights because I really do feel like when we explain children's rights, if we think about children's rights as their basic needs, it's not a ceiling actually. The rights that are laid out in the UN Convention are the basic needs, and that includes listening and being taken seriously. So that shows how fundamental that is to a child's well-being. I think when we point that out to parents, share that information with parents, it allows them to understand as well. It gives them tools to understand what's important to their babies and what their role and responsibility is. Parents get given so many instructions, don't they, and guidance from different places, and there's different ways of breastfeeding, there's different ways of managing sleep routines. But actually, I think children's rights and the Lundy model can also provide some guidance to parents and as well as professionals in how they interact with children and with babies. So yeah, but I think the point of a really good opportunity to listen and respond to babies' views. Baby massage is a really, really good example.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great to hear a bit more about the baby massage and the possibilities in terms of gaining the views and rights of the infant. So I think that was the last question that was in the Q&A feature there. So just before we move over to Nuala to close off for today, I'd just like to conclude today's webinar by saying thanks so much to you, Carmel, for such an informative session, and to all of our attendees today for watching and for giving us their time. It's very much appreciated, and we hope that you got as much from the session as I certainly did today. Thanks again, Carmel. So I'll hand over to you now, Nuala, to close off. Thanks a million.
Yeah, again, Carmel, thank you so much, and thanks to ISPCC. I'm going to make a little confession here about a rights, well, kind of inclusion. I was with a friend last night, and she just moved into a renovated house, you know, and she's small kids, and she said, do you know, I let them choose the paint in their bedrooms, and my immediate reaction was, God, you're very brave. And I walked away, you know, with my role and my responsibility saying, God, it wasn't brave, it was very inclusive. So I think it's just those small things about adapting our own thinking about everyday life when, you know, when children's in their lives and things like that. So, you know, that there's always opportunities to be more inclusive about children, their voice, their want, their needs, and the more that they're exposed to from even the youngest age, that the better it becomes, they become attuned to their voice being included, and that benefits them and us in the long run as well. The colours were fabulous, I must admit, you know, it wasn't, they didn't go way out in the end. So listen, thank you very much, everybody, ISPCC, Carmel, really great thinking there now. I'm going away myself with it. Just again, people who you would have all got the invitations to attend today, those of you who were with us yesterday, and that you know that there's another webinar tomorrow as part of this series. So likewise, those webinars, if you're not able to attend in person, they will be available in due course on the ISPCC website, which is a great facility both for us and for the information that's shared. So thank you all very much, and maybe I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. So goodbye for now.
Take care. Thanks so much, everyone.